Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, every once in a while, you still need to scream from the mountaintop that some pretty horrible shit is still happening out there in the world. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and pick their brains on current projects, state of the industry, influences, and, well, anything else we can really think of in a light and conversational fashion, because that's how we like to do it over here. And if you'd love to subscribe to our podcast, and we hope that you would, because you're listening right now, you can do that pretty much over at any major place where you get your podcasts, like Amazon, Spotify, Apple, and you can find every single one of our episodes archived at our YouTube channel. Also, it'd be great if you'd follow us on social media. You can do that on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at either @InSeats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of updates. And finally, and probably most importantly, could you do us the kindness of visiting us over at intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest movie news, reviews, and anything else under the sun. You know, because we love talking about the moving image, and we got a hard-working team who's cracking away constantly, and I love them dearly. Well, on this one, we're going to be talking about something that should be screamed from the mountaintops. We're talking about the new film, which is hitting VOD platforms this Friday. It's called The People vs. Agent Orange. And it's, it's basically self-explanatory, to be perfectly honest. It enlightens us to the fact that the catastrophe and the crisis of Agent Orange and what it does to people is still going on today in a wide variety of shocking and morally repugnant forms, to be perfectly frank. And we got the unique pleasure of sitting down with directors Adelson and Kate Taverna to talk about the film and just sort of their journey in making this, and sort of the importance of telling these stories that are still going on, which is such a vital thing, because again, you know, even just as a layman, I was kind of oblivious to the fact that some of these things are still going on, and they actually are, and it's horrible to see, but it's important to know. So I hope you enjoy our talk with Alan and Kate, because I know I did. Well, first of all, I mean, obviously, first off, thank you so much for the time, both of you. I really do appreciate this.
We are really glad that you're doing it.
Now, I mean, obviously, first off, congratulations on the film. And I mean, it's one of those things where historically I knew what Agent Orange was, but it was one of those things that had never sort of equated to even sort of current day happenings. And I mean, I'm kind of curious. My first question for you is, walk me through not just the origin of the story, but just sort of the kind of research that I can imagine goes into something like this to sort of marry what was happening in the war to what's happening now.
Yeah, you're right. In fact, it was unexpected at first, and sequential. We began by investigating what happened with the chemical companies during the war in Vietnam. The origins of the film go to a typical New York City story. I'm at a party. A young woman comes to me and says, "So you make documentaries?" I just came back from volunteering in an orphanage in Vietnam, caring for the saddest human creatures you will ever see on Earth. These children are totally neglected by the world. The Vietnamese are doing everything they can to care for them, but there are so many of them, you have to do a film about them. And I was really resistant. Kate and I are husband and wife filmmakers, and we go deep. We made a Holocaust film that took 4 or 5 years called Lodge Ghetto. We made a delightful film called In Bed with Ulysses, which is kind of at home with James Joyce's family.
And with you.
Uh-uh. And a human rights film called Two Villages in Kosovo. The young people in each village, one Serbian, one Kosovar, had been killed off by ethnic attacks, and each thought only the other side would do something so humane. And to take on Agent Orange, which is obviously a film about a 50-year-old problem in a world with new problems, would be really, really challenging. But this young woman put her cell phone in my face and showed me the images of those kids with blown up heads, blown up with water on the brain, and deformed limbs. You see them in the film. Images we were reluctant to use, actually. And anyway, seeing them for the first time, I began to think, if these pathetic, sad insults to nature happen because of human avarice, corporate greed, then there's a lesson for society to learn in this whenever it happened. Kate, being a very fussy film editor, more than 50 films to her credit, was resistant, said we need strong characters and we need a contemporary angle. Then Tran To Nga, the Vietnamese-French protagonist, filed her suit against 26 American chemical corporations. That was 6 years ago. And that gave us a really wonderful contemporary character. And as lawsuits go, a contemporary issue, though it would continue and is still unresolved, but pending resolution on May 10th, allegedly, if the court finally does bite the bullet and makes a judgment. But we didn't have any domestic angle. And as you so truly observed, Dave, people don't know that the spraying, aerial spraying as well as terrestrial spraying of toxic herbicides continues to today. They don't know that Agent Orange, after the military banned its use in Vietnam, came back for use in American agriculture as an herbicide and in American forestry.
And we didn't find that out until 2018 when The Intercept did a piece about Carol Van Strum and the fact that she had all of this archive of documents against the chemical company and from the EPA and all these lawsuits and Freedom of Information Act actions that she had done. We saw that in The Intercept, and then we contacted Carol to get this American angle. And that's why these films take a long time, because you're watching history unfold to a certain extent.
Well, for sure. And I mean, that's the thing that really amazes me, just because, like you say, on one end, this could have been a film about what happened during the war and the results thereafter, and it would have been a different film. But finding the current angle and being able to sort of intersplice the two, I'm kind of curious, from both your perspectives, was there any sort of, I mean, I don't want to say pushback, because I mean, I'm sure there's going to be pushback, but were there any sort of major surprises you sort of uncovered all the way? Because especially given the gap of time, as a viewer, I'm kind of amazed just seeing how much of a blind eye has kind of been turned to it sort of on such a massive scale.
Yeah,
That's interesting
yeah,
question.
very interesting. I could address, and if you want, I will, the breakthroughs in terms of investigation, which went on for really several years, and the uncovering of incriminating documents, internal memoranda from the chemical companies. But what really continues to stagger me with incredulity and ire
Mm.
is the fact that the use of these toxic herbicides is going on now as we speak in Oregon, and that community efforts to protect themselves. We have as a tagline to the film on our poster a quotation from Carol Van Strum, the Oregon anti-herbicide activist, who says, "We have a right to protect ourselves from being poisoned." And yet that right is being defeated repeatedly throughout North America because control over environmental issues is vested at the national and state or provincial levels. So when the people of Lincoln County, Oregon, undertook an initiative, a ballot box initiative, to ban the aerial spraying of herbicides, and barely defeated the forces of the chemical industry and the timber industry, which of course is dominant in Oregon, barely defeated them in the ballot box results. The opposition pushed back and filed a suit claiming that the people of Lincoln County had no right to protect themselves this way because laws over their environment were vested at the state level. And after a protracted delay, more than almost 3 years, I believe, the judge who had the case finally ruled against the people's initiative on the basis of what they call preemption. Her hands were tied. The law did indeed belong to the state of Oregon, and the state would not cede control over this local issue to the county or its voters, and overturned it. And aerial spraying of herbicides could resume then and can continue until today in Oregon.
On private lands and commercial lands, but not on the Forest Service lands.
Right.
Carol had already won that years ago. So
the Forest Service did drop use of the herbicide, originally Agent Orange, the exact mix, then other herbicides, and they stopped doing that for the most part altogether.
I'm always amazed when I hear these stories, because if I tried to put this in a script and try to sell it to Hollywood, I would get booted out of the room for it not being believable. And I mean, I'm kind of curious because whenever I talk to documentarians, I always find it kind of breaks up into two categories. Either you get a phone call, you grab your camera and you go, or it's meticulous research and patience and timing to sort of develop and get through everything. And I'm kind of curious, when you're making a movie like this, how do you know when the story that you want to tell is done? Or can you, on an issue like this, can there be an ending? Is it just sort of a continuation thereof?
That was hard because Madame Tran's case in
Still
Paris is unresolved. Hopefully will be resolved by May 10th. And we will hopefully patch in a title card
Sequel.
A new title card at the end.
at the end of the film.
Three options. It could go in any way. It's always been that way from the beginning. How is this film going to end? Does she win? Does she lose? Or does something awful happen?
Or does the court continue to duck resolving it? But we were shocked. They had the final pleadings in that case only a few weeks ago, and it garnered global media coverage. And it wasn't even the conclusion of the case, but it was a media circus with representatives from really all over the world, making quite the heroine out of Madame Tran, and predictably the villains, the chemical companies. It's a funny story, Dave. Madame Tran has one legal firm representing her.
With three people, three
Uh,
lawyers.
Wow.
A renowned human rights lawyer in Paris named William Bourdon, and his two young associates who have handled the bulk of the case. They're beautiful young people who have been passionate and really have loving relationships with their client, Madame Tran. But on the other side, you have now 15 American chemical companies fully staffed with lawyers.
Multiple lawyers.
A person in the courtroom when they had the final pleadings a couple of weeks ago described how when all the corporate lawyers entered the courtroom in their black robes, it was like a flock of crows filling the courtroom.
That was such a visual analogy, because then they proceeded to attack her and tried to undermine her, which was pretty horrifying to hear the kinds of accusations they were throwing at her.
Well, I mean, I was just gonna say, God willing, she wins. They can turn this into a Hollywood movie.
Yeah, and if she does win, it will rock the world, because she will be the first person, the first Vietnamese individual to have been directly compensated by the American chemical companies.
But she's after more than that. I mean, right now she's very happy with the way this is flying, with the press, with the global attention, with the fact that now this is becoming a sort of globalized movement of support of her case, so that more and more people know about Agent Orange.
For sure.
About what this is happening, that this is like a David and Goliath fight. And for her, that's already a big deal. She considers that winning already.
Well, and I mean, it really does speak to the power of not just your film, but film in general, to be able to tell these stories. Because I mean, I've got to imagine from your perspective as filmmakers and storytellers, when you're going into it, you can only go into it with the hope of screaming from the mountaintop, this shit's still happening. You know what I mean?
Totally. And expecting no one to hear that cry.
The wilderness, as they say. Yeah.
And it is amazing to us that the film has been picked up by 28 American cinemas to show on their virtual platforms. Mm-hmm. Not to rejoice in any way with the advent of COVID, but it has, as you know so well, it has
changed the landscape.
Totally rewritten the business of cinema.
It really has.
Right.
And for documentarians who are doing films that are sad subjects, by no means stories that people will revel in hearing or seeing. Um, uh, Having the opportunity to show your film off of a cinema, which otherwise might only have 1 or 2 or 3 screens,
Yeah.
and instead can put up 10 titles on its virtual platform, the horizon has broadened enormously.
Right. And it's not only supporting the theaters, but it's giving an opportunity for all these organizations that are working with us now, like the War Legacies Project, World Beyond War, the Vietnam rights, environmental groups, veterans groups. They're all sort of behind us now and organizing the audience in a certain way, getting the word out that this is happening. You know, watch this film. We're going to do all kinds of discussions about this. So it's there's something happening. It feels like a tsunami of support behind the film's launch, which is
Well,
really
and you're absolutely right, because I mean, like you say, the almost democratization of film these days because of COVID has opened up these windows for little films like yours, giving these important messages to get out there into the world, and it's an important and beautiful thing. And just, you know what, that's basically it for me. And I just want to say congratulations again on the film, and thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great to meet you.
Great to meet you. And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.